Thank you. Hello. Good morning. Thank you guys for coming out at 10 a.m., which feels like the crack of dawn at South by Southwest. Anything earlier, I feel like, is a crime. But yeah, thank you guys for coming. And I'm really excited to talk to Justina and Amanda today. So Justina is IBM's Chief Impact Officer, and Amanda is the Chief Marketing Officer at Sundial Media, home to iconic brands like Essence Magazine and Refinery 29. And we're here to talk about when AI does the work, what do humans do next? And if you're like me, this question has been really top of mind lately. If you're watching the news, listening to, seeing the headlines, I think it's something that's coming up a lot. So before we jump in, I wanted to get a little read from the audience. Quick show of hands. When you think about that question, how many of you guys are excited? Like a couple people. All right, a little bit. Yeah, some excitement. A little bit. It can be exciting. Like, this is unlocking a lot of possibilities, I think. How many of you guys are freaked out? Yeah, we're freaked out. I'm a little freaked out too, I'll be honest. And how many of you guys are a little overwhelmed? This is moving really quickly. It's hard to keep up. The deluge of news every single day, it feels like. Cool. So a little mix of emotions here. So we'll have some time for question and answer at the end, but I would love to just dive in, and I would love to hear more about your work and your roles, and just tell me kind of what does that look like for you right now, and also I'm kind of curious, like when you first started thinking about this question of when AI does the work, what do humans do next?
Yeah, so I can jump in. First of all, humans still have to work, so I don't want to disappoint some of you that in the audience. So Justina Nixon Saintil, Chief Impact Officer at IBM. I lead our corporate social responsibility initiatives globally, and a huge focus of ours is providing access, free access to AI skilling, cyber as well, and we're starting to do some work around quantum as well. But really, how do we make sure people have access to skills and badges and credentials that can help them move into the new jobs, right, of today and the new jobs of the future? We also do a lot of work around social innovation. How do we leverage IBM's AI tools, our expertise, our platforms to create AI solutions that can have a positive impact in the community? So that's a lot of the focus we have, and it's we have global programs, but we also bring in our IBMers because they are such experts in these areas. We bring them into the community and work directly with them. So when I think about, what do humans do? I mean, I'm privileged to be in a tech-forward company where our strategy is AI and hybrid cloud. So as you can imagine, we've been in the AI space for many, many years. So the expectations for employees, for the work we do, is all embedded in AI. So, when we start thinking about how we use AI, from leadership all the way down to every single employee in the company, we're very focused on upskilling, right? How do we make sure that all of our employees have the right skills? But it also benefits us and it benefits our clients. Because if we have our employees upskilled in AI and we are coming up with new solutions, new ways to support our clients, and we usually deploy those solutions ourselves. We call them Client Zero, and we iterate on them. But that actually helps us from a business perspective, right? It helps us from a revenue perspective. So there's such a huge emphasis across our business on making sure everybody understands AI, they have the tools that they need, and that they're also creating solutions leveraging AI. So that's extremely important for our business.
Hi, everyone. My name is Amanda Butler, and I'm the Chief Marketing Officer of Sundial Media and Technology Group. And I've actually been at the organization about 7 weeks now. And the opportunity that I have right now amongst my board and my CEO is that we've been tasked that we have many, many iconic brands, from Essence, BeautyCon, Afropunk that's really prominent in Brazil, and Refinery 29, and many, many more. And also funds where we really support entrepreneurs with seed rounds with new voices. So what I've been tasked with is taking all these various marketing, creative, production, production and content teams and trying to build an integrated marketing engine. So I had to do that very quickly while the business is moving. We have one of the biggest music festivals in the world with Essence Festival of Culture coming quickly, and AI tooling and how I have to build this team from the ground up almost in a way while keeping the ship moving. Tooling and actually building a team that knows how to use these AI tools responsibly, feel a sense of psychological safety to say, hey, I don't know what I don't know, right? Because you don't want them to mess up. And then we also work with a variety of different media partners and advertisers and companies that we want to make sure that they feel really safe with our information and what we're putting in various tools. So for me, this is like in my day-to-day everywhere, how we can actually build a company that has multiple tools, multiple portfolio options of like media, publishing, et cetera, and preparing it for the future, and how do we do that with these tooling. In terms of when you asked the question about what's next, I think I remember the first time I was introduced to AI was through my little brother. He's a director, he's actually a grown man, but he's a director / content creative to photographer, et cetera, and he showed me a rendering of a shoot. And I said, how did you make this? And he's like, I made it through ChatGPT at the time. And I was like, no way you made that. And it was like several years ago where I was like, hey, listen, this is a tool that's actually enabling and getting to certain things much quicker and allowing him to get business deals that may not have been as easy to have been done before. So I think for me what the future is really about being prepared, not being scared of it, and actually allowing it to really supercharge what your ambitions are.
Yeah, I think, so I want to just jump right in. I think one of the things you just mentioned is this tool is AI is allowing us to do work a lot faster. And I think one thing that I've seen in conversations with executives is that this is a huge test, I think, for managers. If an AI tool gives you back half your time as an employee, what do you do with that? And I think that is a big question for a lot of managers these days. And for some roles, it might be obvious. It might be more, there was a backlog already, and you're just going to be able to get through more. But I think for other roles, you really have to kind of radically rethink what your employees are doing. So I'd love to hear some examples of how you guys have been thinking about this in your organizations.
Yeah, no, I think you're spot on. I think there are two things that are happening. Number one, if you're in a role where you can leverage AI to be more productive, right, you could work faster, and then you could spend more of your time on more strategic client-facing opportunities, or really thinking about how do you strategize. I think that is the number one use we see right now, especially when you think about some of our CSR managers, right, that are out in the field. And the bulk of their work needs to be focused on how do we partner with clients? How do we work with universities and co-create with them? How do we work with K-12 school systems and provide access to our AI tooling? Instead of spending a lot of time, for example, on the grant-making process, right? We can implement an AI agent that helps them which significantly frees up their time. So I think the first thing is, how do you become more productive and efficient by using AI so that you could focus on more strategic areas, right, of your work? The second area is spot on. There will be some roles that will be eliminated because of this. We see the majority of roles shifting, right? They're not going to be eliminated. They're going to shift. AI is going to augment that work. But for some roles that will be eliminated, that's an opportunity for employees to look at other roles, to upskill themselves and to be able to move into other roles across the business. And we see this as well. So for example, we implemented an Ask HR system. And Ask HR allowed all of our employees to access an AI agent that could actually implement a prompt for us, right? And in the past, including me, I would have contacted somebody in HR and said, I need your help, I need your time, to execute this task. Now I go directly to Ask HR, enter my prompt, and it executes for me. What has happened is those team members, some of those jobs have changed. Those team members have moved into more strategic roles across the business, right? They may be working in consulting, they may be working in sales, they may be working in more roles that are, again, client-facing, where you actually need more of a human touch. So net-net, we haven't seen a lot of change, right, from an employee perspective, but some roles have shifted to more strategic roles across the business.
No, I'd agree with that as well. I think for me, I've seen the opportunity for productivity. So I do think roles will eventually evolve. And I think what you're being asked for, I think there's also a lot of opportunity for more junior level employees who are kind of like AI first at this point. And I think for us, in at least the media and entertainment space, it's really about how quickly we can move. So when we think about data mining, going through a lot of content at one time and tagging it from productions, I think ultimately getting ready to go to set and how do you have we just have to move at the rate of speed so quickly, and these tools have helped us. So I think it's more so for us, I think it's not about elimination. I think it's about the people that are not willing to adopt it, right, are probably not going to get left behind. And I think there's also an opportunity where I think as a leader, less from a technology standpoint, I think as a leader, I think about your high performers that are willing to adapt are going to like have a much higher gap between the people that may not be ready and might have slightly underperformed. So I think for me, it's really about how do I prepare my team to be willing to how this supports them.
Yeah. You mentioned, younger employees, and that's one thing that I'm really curious about. And I think a lot of people are wondering, what do all these advancements in AI mean for the entry level set? And so I'm wondering for you both, how do you think about that?
Yeah, I think it's a bit of both. Like, I think a lot of students that are in college right now, they're using AI tools for their schoolwork. They're getting regulations. The professors are keeping up in real time. I think for me, I see it as a breath of fresh air, right? They kind of already got adapted to it. It's a shorthand. At times, you find out they don't even realize they're using AI tools or machine learning. It's just a way of life at this point. And I think for me, it's about the entry-level jobs. When I started my career over 20 years ago, was you were doing Excel and you were doing this, or they were like, oh my God, social media is coming. What do we do? And you saw a lot of marketers get left behind when they weren't ready to adapt to it. So I think for me, I want to make sure that as these employees are coming in, that I'm also regulating that they actually know like the soft and hard skills too, and they're not overcompensating. So for example, right now I'm telling my teams like, I know you guys did not learn how to do M-dashes all over your emails like this, and you don't talk like this. Like, let's make sure we're actually putting that human connection. And I think also for marketing, we always have to have that balance of art and science, and I still think that exists with AI.
Yeah, I mean, we recently made an announcement that we are tripling our entry-level hiring in the United States. And I think this shows how important it is that we continue to build that talent pipeline and make sure that we have people coming into the company that could work alongside the experts, the managers, right, and understand how we work, understand the context and the nuance, because that's the concern, right, that if you are not creating that pipeline, you will have a number of employees who actually don't have the judgment to really understand the output from AI and how to lead AI, how to create AI solutions. So I think that's extremely important. I agree, as Amanda mentioned, I graduated as an engineer many, many, many years ago, and it was almost a requirement on my resume that I was proficient in like Microsoft Excel. I mean, for those of you who graduated a while ago, that was a requirement and probably still is on some resumes. So I feel like understanding AI is going to be a requirement. Right, almost every company is going to look, whether it's an AI certificate, an AI badge, some training or upskilling that someone has done in AI for them to be hired at the company. So I do think when we work with universities, when we work with adults who have been reskilled and upskilled, we actually emphasize the need to obtain some sort of AI, understanding, right, fundamentals of AI. AI ethics, right, responsible use of AI, and really attain that badge, because that is going to help them and actually move them forward on the list, right, when they are applying for jobs. So I think that's going to be very critical, but I don't want to lose lose the idea that we need to create a talent pipeline. A lot of companies are very focused on, oh, we don't have to hire as many people, or we don't have to hire as many people outside, I was graduating from college. But what are you going to do later on, right, when, a lot of people are retiring, or the ones who are the experts, the ones who have the judgment, the ones who understand the context and the nuance? That's going to be extremely critical to make sure that entry-level hires are working alongside those folks so that they, your business can be successful. One
thing I'm hearing from executives is they're really looking for, with AI tools that can kind of take over a lot of the lower level sort of grunt work that entry level employees would have done in the past. I remember filling out spreadsheets myself, and I really don't think that you have to do that anymore in the same way. It requires younger workers to come in at a higher level, it seems. And I'm wondering if you guys have rethought your training processes and what you're looking for, given that.
I think I'm finding it less that, to them it's still entry level. I just think that they have a skill set that's more advanced than what it used to exist. I think before you had to earn your stripes and do a little bit of grunt work or what was perceived as grunt work. I think you're coming at a more strategic level, as Justina was saying. I think they're able to process information much quicker, right, than we would have to, or you'd have to read a physical book or do different things and research. Now you have tools that you still have to triple check to make sure the information is accurate, but you have an ability to like speed up so much. So I think it's an opportunity about how do you identify high performers or people that don't get lost along the way? But I don't think it's necessary of like they won't have jobs to come into. I think they're coming in at a strategic level because they've been doing that in college or wherever they're coming from already.
Yeah, I think, spot on. I think a lot of universities, some of them are a little bit more advanced, right, in bringing AI in a very intentional way for their students. And a lot of students already using it. So when I started meeting with university leaders last year on this topic, there was a mix of, do we allow the use or do we block? And most of them, of course, leaned into, no, we need to allow this because they're using it anyway. Universities had to think of different ways to assess their students and assess their knowledge, and also how do you change the mindset of professors. So a lot of the work that we do with universities is also not just upskilling students, but also working with professors. So they understand the tools, they understand how to think about new assessments around student knowledge and understanding, and that's gonna make a difference. And when you think about also the power skills, it's not just the tech skills, right? Corporations are looking, of course, to make sure that you have some AI understanding, you have some fundamentals around AI, but they also want to make sure you're agile, right? You understand how to adapt, you understand how to be a continuous learner, you understand how to collaborate. So a lot of those are skills students are learning in university anyway, so those translate very nicely to what corporations are looking for. So those power skills or soft skills are going to rise to the top as even more important than they ever were, especially when AI does a lot of the work for you. And then when I think about the hires, I'm going back to the Ask HR example. A lot of our entry-level hires are leveraging the tool, but they're also behind the scenes providing, more information around how to make the tool better. You cannot implement an AI tool without that oversight and without a human in the loop. So even as all across our company, I think 270,000 employees are using the tool, you have entry-level hires who are looking at, why did an employee do a thumbs down? Why didn't it work for them? What were they asking for that we don't have the capability to support? And those students or new hires are actually giving that feedback back to our IT team, back to the HR team, and we're using that feedback to continuously iterate on the tool. So again, just deploying the tools is not enough. You need to make sure that people are assessing it, making it better, iterating on it. So when we probably had an entry-level hire who would do the coding behind the tool, now what they're doing is because they understand the code, they understand the end-to-end process, they understand how employees are using it all across the business, and they're able to give the feedback, right, based on employee feedback, that they're looking into very closely on how to make these tools better. So that's a different way that an employee is coming into our company versus maybe how they would have come in maybe a few years ago.
Something else I've been thinking about a lot is just kind of the emotional dimension of this question. I think, we can talk about this and like economists and talk about what the data shows, but I think for all of us, there are feelings about work, good, bad, and the rest. And so I think that it's something that I am very curious how leaders are navigating and how they're helping their teams through this really rapid shift. So, there's a lot of fear, of course. It's hard not to be a little freaked out by some of the headlines that we're seeing. But then there's also what I've been noticing more recently is almost an existential piece, especially I've been hearing that from software engineers where a lot of the tools are very advanced and it kind of calls into question their whole identity. And, they spent so many years building this skill set. What does it mean that a machine can do it so well, and what does that mean for them? So I think, there's a lot of, complicated feelings. So I'd love to hear a little bit about how you guys are thinking about that and how you guys are leading your teams through it.
Yeah, I think especially in computer science, but I think across any discipline, right, marketing, any discipline, there is a feeling of some loss and fear because what you would have spent time on, right, and how you were able to demonstrate your expertise, now you have tools that are able to do some of that for you. I've heard of students, not my 2 children in college, but other students in college who are actually saying they're not going to use the tool at all, right, because they want to make sure that their professor knows that they understand the content, and they're actually pushing back on using the tool. Of course, like I mentioned, not my 2 children in college, but I do think that embracing the tool is the way to go, right? A lot of people's identity is connected to this, but this is meant to augment your expertise. It's meant to augment, right, your connection, your work. It's not meant to replace it. And I think the people who are actually embracing the tool, that actually diminishes the fear, and they get to do new and different things with it. I'll give you an example that's actually even more personal. My son graduated with a computer science degree, my oldest son. And, he's working now, he has a full-time job. And last weekend, he called me and he said, I'm building like 7 AI agents, right? If you think about someone who had, with a computer science degree who may have spent a lot of time just coding one solution, one thing, right? And now they could use that time leveraging AI tools and create 10 different products, 10 different solutions. So a lot of it is giving them the opportunity to do that, to expand their work, to move with speed, to do more. And I think once they realize that they still have the expertise, they understand what they're trying to solve for, they understand the outcomes that they're looking for, then I think many of them will embrace it. But you do have to go through that period, and you have to empathize that a lot of their work is tied to their identity, and a lot of people are going through that process of, oh my goodness, I don't have to code this solution anymore. Someone is doing it for me. But you also need the expertise to know, does this make sense? Does it have business context? Is this output what we need? So your expertise still comes, even if you're not actually doing the work. And I think that enables them to do even more. So I think once people realize that, it changes a bit how they think about, accessing those tools.
Yeah, I would say I'd come from professional and also personal anecdotes. I think for professionally, I think it can really be supportive, and I think for me as a leader, it's really important for me to make sure my team understands that they can have an honest conversation with me about their comfort level, and how do we work really closely with our technology organization and actually show it in examples of practicality. So for example, we're in media, we have a flurry of RFPs. We're also an organization that owns properties that would be considered in the DEI space, right? How do you answer RFPs quickly? We do use these tools to help us get even faster out the door, and also test concepts and see what's actually happening with crawling the internet and what's happening in the world. So I think from that standpoint, I think also too, from a personal standpoint, I think for me, I think it's about acknowledging where you might have gaps. I think for me about 2 years ago, I actually took a certification at MIT. I realized I got my graduate degree over 10 years ago. A lot of things are changing. I'm in an industry that if you're not continuously moving forward, you can get left behind as well. And I actually did that at night, right? I did it for several weeks, got my certification, probably have to go and get some more. But I think in terms of that, I think you have to continuously educate yourself. And I think also too, we're having the ability to work with founders and entrepreneurs and seeing the gap that is closing for them, accessibility. responsibility of having pitch to goes to raise funds. People that have certain kind of learning disabilities actually have tools to help them feel more confident to write, to have conversations, to put their thoughts together. I think for me, I see more of the enablement that is allowed for a lot of people that unfortunately didn't always have access that they have now.
I'm curious, again, in your own work, I appreciated that example of going back and getting that certification. I think, I'm wondering if there were any moments where, something that you've done for decades in your work, you no longer really have to do in the same way, and how you confronted that and how you moved through that personally, whether you had to shift your mindset a little bit about it.
Yeah, I think just coming up with ideas. I'm an engineer, that's what I've been trained on, and, eventually moved to marketing and moved to corporate social responsibility. But across my entire career, part of what I loved is being able to create, right? Whether it's creating a product, whether it's creating a program, and being able to look at what's happening, benchmark, come up with an idea, pitch the idea, get that buy-in. And what I love right now is you can actually ask an AI tool and come up with many different ideas, right? Many different things, especially when it starts knowing you and knowing your work. And then the part that I love is that I'm able to look across all of this and say, what makes sense for us, for our business, right? For our partners in the community, what makes sense for us to move forward with? And that's the part that I enjoy even more now, because now I have a number of ideas that probably I would not have thought of on my own, right? We all think we're doing this fantastic job, right? If you think, and thinking about coming up with ideas, but now a tool can say, here's 7 for you to choose from, and now you can spend some time really thinking about what makes sense for your strategy and what makes sense for your business context. So I am actually very happy with that, with this move to using AI tools in that way. And then once you figure out what makes sense, then you can actually go back to the tool and help build it out, right? But you still have to go and pitch the idea. You have to get the budget for it. Mm-hmm. You have to get the buy-in across your business. So that collaboration, that influence, all of those soft skills now come in. So although AI will give you a great plan, it will give you some ideas to choose from, you still have to use your judgment. And you have to make those decisions, and you have to, work across your company. So again, I think those skills are going to be even more important, and I'm spending more time in that area versus having to spend days or weeks, et cetera, coming up with a number of different ideas in how we're going to implement our work. So that's one way that I've seen it, completely changing the way that I work.
I would say for me, on the campaign development side, one example is doing research. So we used to do copious amounts of research. We'd have to wait for materials, analysts, et cetera, to go through all the information. And ultimately, too, I think rendering, right? How do you articulate your idea? How do you sell it to the world? All of that. But one thing I will add to that, there's nothing as special as working with a creative team and you see them crack the nut on a really big idea or insight that you see like humans are never going to go away in the process, right? I think that there's been ideas that has been presented to me that I'm like, I know I wouldn't get from a tool. There's something about a human experience, understanding how when you do a TV spot, for example, how it connects with an audience in a way that you want to share it, all of that actually comes from a lived experience. So I think for me, I see the balance of both, where it's been really helpful to get there quickly, but ultimately, too, you unlock that special gift.
So that leads me perfectly into my next question, which was, it was about how, I feel like these days there's so much conversation about, at least in the tech space, about what's your company's moat? Like, what is your kind of strategic edge as AI gets better and disrupts more and more businesses? What makes your company or business durable? And I think the same question applies to individuals and to humans. And I think that there are a lot of different ideas out there about like what is uniquely human, what is our moat, essentially. But I would love you guys if you had to name just one quality, what would it be?
I would say for my organization is our audience. We call her the Chief Influencer Officer, and we have a variety of different properties that have women at the focal point of it. So I think for us, it's really about our audiences and how we're integrating everything together right now so that we can basically sell across the board of all the different properties and experiences. So I think it's really how do we stay in depth with them.
and in terms of like, I guess in terms of, you know, as humans, as you were saying, the kind of creativity piece, I think that's kind of what I was thinking about in terms of, you know, as AI is able to take on more work, you know, what is it that we're going to still do no matter what?
I think for me on the creative side, we're going to always brainstorm still, right? I think we're bringing in people who have done really iconic work back in the day, whether it was Vice or Money Diaries or just kind of articulating what do you do with money when you live in a big city versus what happens when you're navigating a space like Hollywood. And I think for us as our team, even though we're getting tooling and research and getting the work out the door and replying back to sales channels better and faster, it's still the people in the building that make it special, that really temperature checks it, that tells you like, that's not gonna hit, I wouldn't do that, my mom doesn't identify with that. I think those are the things that we still have to listen to our gut of like, what's the right thing to put out in the world.
I mean, our focus is on how do we help our clients. You know, so you will never lose that human touch in really engaging with a client and understanding their needs and what is the challenge that they're having that we want to solve for. So I think that's where, you know, humans will always be needed on that client engagement, understanding the needs of your partners and your clients and really creating the right solutions for them. So even when I think about it from a social impact perspective, meeting with universities, meeting with nonprofit partners, meeting with K-12 school systems and understanding how are they thinking about AI, how do we co-create with them, and what are their unique needs that we can create a solution around. So we have a program called the Impact Accelerator, and a big part of that is leveraging IBM's AI platforms like Watson X, but really looking at what the needs of our partners are and co-creating with them and continuing to iterate, implementing these solutions, and then tracking and measuring results around them. So AI can't actually replace that, right? Replace that connection and replace that co-creation with a partner. You can get a lot of information from AI, you can benchmark, you could get a lot of ideas, but at the moment, having that human connection with our clients and our partners is extremely important, and that's where we see a lot of success.
I want to kind of look forward a little bit, and I think, you know, one thing I keep hearing about is, you know, in the future, all employees will become managers of their own teams of agents, and we'll all be orchestrating these agents to get all of this work done. And I think some people are already living that, but I think for many of us, it's still a bit in the future. A bit theoretical still, but I'm wondering how you both think that we can prepare for that future and whether there are certain skills that you think will become more important as we kind of enter into this new phase of work.
Yeah, you know, we're starting to see that happen now, but I still think it's a mix. It's not just leading AI agents or leading humans. I think it's both. And I think managers are going to need that skill set where they can lead what we consider like a mixed group of people, right? There will be AI agents and there will be humans in the loop. I think that the skill set that you're going to need is, again, how do you make the right decisions? How do you understand what you're solving for, and how do you bring in judgment? And I think judgment is going to be so important. And judgment is really, a lot of it is based on your experience, right? Your expertise. You've made some calls before. Some of them may have failed. Some of them may have been successful. And you learn along the way. So I think being able to make those judgment calls, whether you're leading a team of humans or whether you're leading AI agents, I think that's going to be important. And I also think you need to have a human in the loop. There is nothing that we implement, not one AI agent that we implement, that there is not some human oversight or human intervention or human in the loop. And along the way, right? Not just at the end or at the beginning. And I think that is so critical to make sure that humans are involved in every decision that is being made. I mean, you have to think about data privacy. You have to think about where AI agents are accessing, you know, what information they're using, what are the decisions they're making, Even think about hiring, right? If you're using an agent to first probably screen resumes, you need to make sure you have a human that's actually overseeing that and probably doing some spot checks, right? Because you want to continuously iterate these tools and continue to make them better. So I think that human in the loop will continue. The skills I think that are going to be needed, and we're doing this across IBM on a continuous basis, just everyone understanding AI. They need to understand AI ethics. They need to understand the responsible use of AI, but also, understand the fundamentals around AI and have access to all the right tools to be able to upskill themselves as well. I mean, we have tools that are just inherent to our business. So you need to understand how to use those tools, what it means for our business as well. So I think that's going to be important. But as a manager who is leading an AI agent and a human, I think that's a complex set of skills you now need. You need the technical capabilities, right? But you also need, like most managers have, right? That human, right? Engagement and collaboration and emotional, understanding and everything else that you need. So I do think that what constitutes a manager today is going to shift and change over time, and a new set of skills are going to be needed.
And the only thing I'd add to that too is just due diligence. I think is a huge component of it. I think it can kind of get you halfway there, but you do need to tap in some experts. So for example, I had a friend that's an entrepreneur, and he has his entire organization run entirely by agents. He has a CMO, all the different things, and I saw his stuff, and I said, I hope you are actually talking to an IP lawyer, because you might get in some trouble here. So I do think it's an element of like how you get started and kind of gets you a lot further where you're not, running into a lot of lawyer fees, kind of leading up, but you do need someone who's at an expert level to look at the work. And I think that's where we're working a lot internally for my team. It's really about getting you started. I think also too, where I've seen people on my team do really, really well is that they'll go and they'll use an agent to understand a vertical that they may not be familiar with to prepare them for a conversation, to be good use of someone's time. We're remote, everyone's traveling all the time. If you have to have a really complex conversation and a quick decision, it can really help you prep. If you're talking to an engineer or someone like that, you can understand the nomenclature. I think sometimes people use it incorrectly, and I think it could get a lot of things lost in translation. So I think due diligence is a huge component of that. And then how do you make sure you're working with experts to ensure you're not entering in a space that's not great, which is my friend almost entered.
I think that's great advice. So, the other thing that I've been hearing lately is just that this sense, especially in organizations where adoption of AI has, progressed, and a lot of people are using the tools, and it's just they're feeling like the pace of work is accelerating. Mm-hmm. Things are just happening faster, and I think a lot of teams and managers haven't yet caught up fully, and it's still kind of, I think folks are still in a process of trying to adjust to this new metabolism. So I'm wondering, how do you manage that change when the pace kind of shifts, and have you recalibrated your own teams?
I think this is something that I'm navigating in real time. I think the rate of speed that we're able to move is incredible, but I also think in certain elements it's not sustainable, right? I think we're navigating this too. We're getting through Q1 right now, and it's like, how are you checking on the bodies, right? Because now that they might see their colleague moving faster, or the work is getting out the door much faster, you have to do the recaps, you got to do the reports, the analysis, optimize as you go. And I think I'm starting to see like a sense of burnout, right? And you can't be in burnout in March. Yeah. You have a whole year to go. So I think it's something that we're trying to find the better balance of pause. Is like, was that the right volume to accelerate to, right? What is that happy medium? So it's something that we're actually navigating in real time of analyzing the work. How much more revenue did it bring into our business? Was it worth the upside? And how do you allow your team to take breaks and gaps in between the work? So it's something that we're analyzing because we're moving at a rate that we probably wouldn't have worked at a year ago.
Yeah, definitely expectations are higher now than ever before. And I think because everyone has access to these tools, and we've spent the last few years also on upskilling and retraining, the expectation is that people are moving faster, they're delivering work faster, they're, implementing new programs faster. What we've seen especially on the social impact side, is that a lot of our partners are not there yet. So although internally we want to move faster and the expectations are there, we also have to empathize with some of our nonprofit partners or other partners that we co-create with and understand that they need some time to also, be upskilled, be at the level to be able to engage with us on a regular basis. So one of the things that we launched a year or so ago is what's called AI for Impact, and it's a set of series, workshops, where we bring in our nonprofit partners, we bring in some university leaders, and we talk about AI solutions. We help them understand what are the right rubrics or the guiding principles they have to think about around tool implementation, and we give them some ideas of how AI can actually help them speed up their work, help their beneficiaries further, and help implement new solutions in the community. So to me, that's a responsibility that we have. Although as a corporation, we do tend to move very quickly, and again, we've been on this journey for a while because we've been an AI company for some time. But when we think about our external partners that we work with, we also need to understand, right, where they are and meet them where they are and help them along this journey as well. So that's where, we sometimes have to take a step back and take some time and make sure that what we're co-creating or what we're offering makes sense for them. One other thing that I'd mention just internally, 3 years ago, we started what's called a What's Next Challenge, and now we do it every summer. And we invite all of our employees to participate. And at the end of it, it's great because we actually recognize those teams that have participated, the teams that have submitted great ideas. And there are two benefits to that. Number one, it gives all of our employees an opportunity to upskill themselves and learn more about new tools that we are deploying. But number two, it actually gives them an opportunity to come up with new ideas of solutions that we can actually deploy with our clients. So, it's a huge benefit to our business. So for anyone who's leading a function or leading a corporation, having sort of like that top-down engagement at the leadership level, but also having an opportunity for all of your employees to participate in something that can help everybody be upskilled, that's going to be beneficial. And that will help everyone, also move more quickly. But I think that expectation around speed is there, and I do think we do have to take that pause, step back, and make sure we check in with our teams as well, to understand where they are along the journey and how we can further help them.
Another theme that has been coming up, especially this past weekend in some of the conversations I've been having, is, for CEOs and executives who are leading large teams, one thing that they're bringing up is this feeling of responsibility, kind of a sense of responsibility for their employees, for their organization, kind of shepherding them through this massive change that we're seeing. And even in the face of so much uncertainty, I don't think anyone's got it completely figured out, where we're all heading. So I wanted to ask how you guys think about the sense of, your responsibility to your teams.
Yeah, I think for me, I think about my responsibility to my teams, but also the audiences and brands we represent. I think Sundial, what's often I have the conversation with my organization is that we own toys or brands that belong to their communities, right? Essence has been around for 50 plus years. It means something very special to Black women, Refinery 29, BeautyCon and beauty industry, all of that. And that's a sense of responsibility. And part of that is like having the employees in the building too, and having that balance when you talk about the voice of an audience, writers, how do you have that right balance where AI is a tool, not a replacement, right? How do you get more stories out quicker, faster, and in the surfaces that audiences are traveling to, right? Social's breaking news first now. They're showing up in different Substacks, like all of that. So I think for me, the responsibility is about how do I keep my team to be able to take on this new endeavor, right? So they're not left behind or like obsolete in this new environment that's evolving, but also to the level of trust and equity that we have to our audiences that have been around before we have acquired them and then will continue to be around much longer after us. So it's a sense of like weighted responsibility that I have as a leader of the people and my audiences.
Yeah, I just shared how we're looking at it internally for our employees. And again, we're privileged to be in a company where we just talk about this all the time, and there are a lot of resources available for everyone. I feel that there is a heavy responsibility for corporates, for governments, for everyone to bring awareness externally for the communities. And one of the things that I am realizing, of course, this audience is here because they care about this, right? This is important to understand, how work is evolving. A huge concern is that a lot of our communities may not be aware of this. They're not aware that work is shifting, that they need to be upskilled or reskilled, that they may need to start looking for new opportunities. So I think there is a responsibility for corporates to really provide that support. Number one, industry understands what is changing, right? How a job is shifting, what are the processes that are being automated, what new jobs are going to look like. So there's a responsibility to share that information externally. There's a responsibility to bring more awareness, right, across every level, right? Everyone is going to be impacted by this. So I think there's a huge responsibility there as well. And, and one of the things we offer is free skilling programs. So I think corporates also have to look at what are we offering, right, to the community so that they won't be left behind. So we have a program called IBM Skills Build, completely free content, free learning pathways, free badges, content made by experts, both education experts and our own experts internally at IBM, because we understand how AI is shifting those roles, the different jobs. But I think there's a huge responsibility there, and it's not just just not one entity, right? This is not a siloed thing or solo. It really has to be governments, it has to be industry, it has to be the university space, community colleges. How do they look at making sure people are prepared and ready for these types of jobs? So I do think there is a responsibility of leadership to focus a lot of efforts there in the community.
All right, I want to make sure we have a few minutes for some Q&A. So whoever would like to ask a question, I believe you can just head up to the microphone.
Hello. So my name's Robin, and been working a lot with AI agents, and some of the things that we say, and one of the things I just want to get your thoughts on is, you look at Jack Dorsey, he obviously cut 40% of his staff due to AI. He said this is going to be the future. I also was looking at the math in terms of context windows. You can estimate a human's output brain capacity in a day is about $8 of what you would spend with ChatGPT, Perplexity, Claude, or any of or Gemini. And so really, I understand businesses are looking at it a perspective, how do we protect our employees? But I want to get your thoughts on the math mightn't make sense, and businesses are there to maximize value for the shareholder. So how are you thinking about the math in that really?
Yeah, I haven't looked at all the calculations around this, but even just addressing your first question, I think a lot of businesses are making those announcements. I'm actually skeptical that they're all related to AI. I think there are a lot of other factors that are coming in, whether it's just cost cutting, geopolitical, changes, post-pandemic hiring that is, being looked at very carefully. So I think there are a lot of other factors and not just AI. I do know that a lot of businesses are investing in AI, and they want to see what does that mean for their processes, the new jobs that will be created from that. So there's a moment of transition, right, that's happening across businesses. But I wouldn't say that a lot of those announcements they seem to tie it to AI, but I'm skeptical of that. I do think, and I was in the age when the internet became available, right? And I remember starting to use it a little bit in college, and then once I graduated, it was almost the norm that we were using it at work. And a lot of new businesses were created from that, right? So even though at the time there were a lot of people saying, "What am I going to do?" Right? I don't have digital skills, I don't have the access, and there's been a lot of time and money and investment put into making sure we close that digital divide. Never closed all the way, but it got pretty close. But then a lot of new opportunities came from having the internet available. And even over the weekend, just speaking to a lot of entrepreneurs and small businesses that are thinking about it, right? Creating new solutions, creating AI agents. So I do think there's going to be a lot of growth opportunities. It may not always be in the big companies, but I think there will be opportunity for growth for jobs, as we move forward. So we are in a transition period, and that's going to impact a lot of people who are not upskilling themselves, who are not thinking about what that means for their future career. But I think for those who do, I think things will swing and there'll be more opportunity. It may not be what it looks like today. Yeah. And honestly, a lot of us don't know what that is going to look like. For even someone like me who's in this business, I don't know what some of these new jobs are going to look like 5 years from now. But I do know that a lot of us are going through that transition, and the only way to be successful is to make sure you have skills along that path.
Thank you very much.
Hi guys, my name is Janet. I'm a 23-year-old data scientist. I have my dream job, and I've spent the last 8 months of my life and career making an AI model that automates what took me months to do it in minutes. So I was in crisis during this process, but you were definitely right. It's forced me to focus on my soft or power skills, as you mentioned before. So now I'm forced to be more client-facing, which I hate. I'm more of a back-end person. So now I'm attending meetings with my boss, explaining to clients how they can leverage our AI tool, which has been very difficult for me because as a computer science major in college, collaboration was not the biggest focus of my program. So talking to people is not something I really enjoyed. My question for you is, I think a lot of conversations surrounding AI seem so binary, should we or should we not? I think sometimes people are skipping out on the how portion when we have people who are still very resistant to this adoption. So do you think that the conversation being so binary is limiting how fast we are adopting AI?
Yeah, I think it's people are making it yes or no, right? I don't think it's that. I think it's an in-between. I think even what you were sharing, like someone who may not have a data science background might use an AI agent to kind of help them fulfill the gap that they have. But I've also seen agents be used to help people practice how to have certain conversations or pitches, right? Like people who come from how to actually write an email, right? There's people who have dyslexia. They have different types of elements that they're working through that has been a limitation in the past, right? So I think in terms of that, I think that it's not an either or. I think we're missing the human connection part of AI. That it's really a tool that can really help support you in whatever avenue that you might need it in, or to just make you stronger. So I think that's where we're kind of going wrong. We're making it yes or no.
100%. I agree. I also love what you shared, which is how did you pivot, right, into actually creating AI agents, which is going to be very marketable, when you're looking for a job opportunity, is being able to demonstrate, I'm not just using a tool, right, from a prompt engineering perspective and looking for an outcome, but I'm actually solutioning on a tool I'm creating. And I think that's going to be very important for the skills that you develop, but you're also spot on. You need to demonstrate those other skills, right? Because when you're working in a corporation now, it's not going to be just, this is my role and this is what I do. AI agents or the work are going to cover across multiple disciplines. So understanding what that means, how to collaborate, how to work in other areas, how do you build expertise? I mean, Amanda mentioned this, right? Some of her team members, if you don't have an engineer, right there, how do you sort of build some level of knowledge or expertise? Maybe not the deep expertise of someone who actually majored in that role, but enough to understand what that agent is doing or how you have to collaborate across teams. Those are all the things that I think people have to build. I think I read somewhere, I heard somewhere, like generalists are actually going to become even more important. You know a little bit of almost everything, but that actually helps somebody actually did a dance back there. That is actually going to help when you're implementing some of these new systems.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Bruno. I'm a headhunter in Brazil. We're talking a lot about the social skills the leaders have to have now and to work in community in the companies. But how can we check these capabilities when we are hiring someone and say, like, this is the kind of person who can do this, the things that we are trying to do right now?
I think assessment of skills is going to be critical now. First of all, I think you definitely want to see whether someone has some level of AI experience. And I go back to whether they have a credential, whether they have something on their resume where they can demonstrate that they've, created or used AI. So I think that's like just going to be a basic screening, methodology. I think how do you assess someone's knowledge is something that people are still trying to figure out, right? And I mentioned universities are thinking about it right now. I'm sure, AI use, even at the high school level, teachers are thinking about how to assess someone's knowledge and understanding. But I think, again, that's going to come out in actually engagement with that person. It may not be something that you could actually tell just from a job application or a resume. So you do want to have the right screening in place to get to that level, but I think that assessment and understanding of someone who can talk about, right, how they actually used it, but also not just use it to get an outcome. What were they trying to solve? Did it solve it? How did they use the outcome, right, the output from an AI tool? What did they do after that? I think it's going to be the most important question. Not just that I used it and I got an output, but explaining what that meant and how they were able to move forward with whatever that output, was. I think those are going to be very important questions to really assess their knowledge and understanding of it.
Yeah, I would say I kind of came up through old tech, where it was very about critical thinking and making you do really weird tasks and problems in real time. And I still believe that rings true. I think sometimes you have people that can send you work on email, what have you. You don't know what they're doing behind the camera, behind the computer screen. And I like to just take them on the spot and just see, how does your brain actually work? Walk me through the problem. I don't care if you got it right. I want to know if you are using an agent, what are the prompts you're using? How did you, did you ask me questions about what we're trying to solve for? What is the end result? Can you take me through a journey? That, to me, is still very, very critical, and that's probably because I was hazed during tech interviews.
We all were.
Back in the day.
So we still need a human to the hiring process.
100%.
To check
Yeah.
this, yeah. All right. Thank you.
I think we have time for like one more, maybe two. Yeah, go ahead.
Hello, guys. Thank you for the panel. My name is Ikena Ibo-Simba. I'm a first-year MBA student over at UT Austin. I'm also interning here for a local private equity firm. And so my question was mainly around, it was aimed at Amanda, but I would love to hear both of you guys' perspective. It's really around like modern go-to-market strategies for enterprise and mid-sized companies. And so one of the things that we struggle with is trying to determine like what types of marketing methods are most effective nowadays, with AI being so prevalent. What have you guys seen from a strategic standpoint that's been primarily effective, with AI agents or without, from, sourcing contacts to enrichment? I know we have tools out there like Clay and other types of AI first native tool sets, but just from your experience kind of being battle tested in the space, what would you say is kind of like the new hotness around the space from a go-to-market perspective?
I think go-to-market, I think for me, I still think certain things ring true. I think it depends what industry you are in, right? I think I've worked for lifestyle brands where really hitting the culture and having people talk on your behalf is really important. So sometimes it's about what's the insight, what's the creative, and how did you bring it to the market in a disruptive way. I think where you're kind of doing an always-on model, I think it's about using certain agents of like, what's the research, what's the insights, do you have perfect product fit, like things like that you have to really substantiate what you're bringing to market. So it really varies based on if you're like launching a product, right, that's disruptive in the tech space. You're trying to tell a story where it's really about your brand is really selling what you're selling. I've kind of been there, where the brand is more powerful than the product, unfortunately. But I think it kind of varies case by case. I think now, from a media standpoint, really understanding where our audiences are going and then what our competitors are doing. And then ultimately, too, we work in news cycles. So it's really about how do we break news really, really quickly as soon as it happens. And sometimes our agents actually notify us so that we can kind of get going or have things pre-ready to go. So the other thing that I have to balance is my team actually getting sleep. So how do we program things, content calendars, all of that, workflows being really quickly because they're changing day by day. So it's more about the resource planning that I'm using the most for.
Absolutely. Yep.
I mean, I'll say from a go-to-market perspective for us, we lean on trust, right? We're a bit of enterprise, B2B company, so we definitely lean on the fact that we'll create a fit-for-purpose model for you to solve your business challenge, right? And then you can trust us because we will only use your data for what you need, right? And no one else will be able to access that. So I definitely think we lean on that trust for businesses. And then even for the work that we do from a corporate social responsibility perspective, we also lean into influencers because those are people that people also trust and they are listening to them. So, you know, we work with them to get the word out around our AI skilling programs and other programs because, again, we want to make sure that we're working with people that people gravitate towards, they trust the message, and they will connect with us through our programming.
Fantastic. Thank you, guys.
Thank you guys so much for coming out. I really appreciate it. So, round of applause for our panelists.
Yeah.
That's great. And I just realized, or halfway through, I realized I never introduced myself. I'm Jo Constance. I write for Bloomberg about work and management and AI. So come find me afterwards. I love to talk about this stuff, or find me on LinkedIn. Would love to chat. Thanks, guys.
Awesome.
Thank you.